I'd like to call this meeting to order. Council, we're back here again. When I remember back 4 years ago, I was in a very different frame of mind. I think I was nervous. I was shaking so bad. After 96 meetings, I think we're all different now. And we've had a great term. We got lots done. But if I reflect back on last year's campaign, because everyone, like you guys, have just come through a campaign. And the last campaign 4 years ago was quite difficult. And I know, Council, you've heard this story, but I just want to tell part of it to get into my second half. There was sometimes in the morning I'd get up, because of I'd hit Steinbach online, read what happened yesterday, and I would feel pretty much demoralized. Felt like, it just was hard to keep going and running a campaign with some of the things that were going on. And one early morning, I checked my phone, and I find it hard to believe that Councillor Susan Penner and I were on the same time frequency, but either she texted this to me very late the night before, or she was up at 5 o'clock in the morning texting me. Not likely that she was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, she texted me a verse. It was Habakkuk 1:5. And I'll just read it to you. Look at the nations, look and be amazed. For I'm doing something in your own day, something you wouldn't believe, even if someone told you about it. And I just believe that became kind of the verse for the last term. And I do believe too that God's word's it's timely. I believe that can be a verse for this term too. I do believe that when we look at the end of this next 4 years, if we work together and we do things right, I think we'll be saying the same thing. Look at what happened. I think we wouldn't even believe it, and maybe even some residents wouldn't believe what got done, even if they were told this was going to happen this time. Council, I think our tasks, like in the last term, we had a list, and we had projects, and we got them done. And I think this is the first council I've ever been on, any board I've ever been on in 4 years, we got everything done. Or we got it in process, and that's a great accomplishment for us. But I do believe now for the next 4 years, our next term, I think we need to build a foundation for our future. I think we need to be looking 20, 30 years into the future, and we need to start looking and setting up the councils that are going to come before us, with capital plans, and projects and infrastructure repair. We have to look at what's coming behind us and leave it in great shape for our kids and our grandkids. And that's my opening today, is just as we go, and we'll have time, and we are plugging that into this fall, is a time to dream for our community, a time to plan for our community. But I think this is that term, that pivotal time that we have to look at, take our sights off of a 4-year plan, 4-year projects to 2030, to the future. Because Steinbach's going to keep growing. We're going to keep having immigration. We're going to keep having businesses come to our community, and we need to make sure that we're ready and it's sustainable. And so that is my call for the next four years for us, is that we plan for the future, and we plan for a city that can grow and grow and grow into the future. Thank you. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Looking for a motion to adopt.
I will.
Okay, second by Councillor Penner. Just before we do a job, I just want to make a mention that in other business, there's an off-agenda item, a motion to have Councillor Jake Siemens to nominate for running for AMR. So if you can just add that in, and then we will adopt the agenda. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we have the minutes of October 18th, 2022, the regular council meeting. We've all had a chance to review, looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Hebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. It is just a little past 7:35, so we'll go directly into the public hearing. We got 6A, the Conditional Use CU-2022-03. It's referring to 378 2nd Street. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For your benefit and those of that of council, the introduction for this file for Conditional Use CU-2022-03 for 378 2nd Street. The owner of the property and the applicant for the conditional use is Rachel Friesen. Purpose of the conditional use application is to allow the operation of a daycare center out of the subject property. As per City of Steinbach zoning bylaw 2100, a daycare center is defined as the provision of child care services for 9 or more children in a provincially licensed facility. Notices as are required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence received on the file. With respect to the application, the applicant indicates that they had gone through a previous process for a property that they owned previously in Steinbach. A recommendation from administration is that council approve the application subject to any further information that may be provided at the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Okay. Okay, later on, if there are questions, we'll have to go to the podium. Okay. Okay, then is there anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file? I'll ask again, is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? One last time, is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Seaman, or Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Hebert. Go ahead, Councillor Seaman, or Councillor Penner. Sorry, new seating arrangements. Councillor Seaman used to sit there.
It's going to be a long term at that.
It is.
I really like this project, and I'm happy to approve it. Childcare is something that is really needed in our community, and I know from being a parent myself, home daycares are really coveted, I would say. So to be able to have this, really all that's happening here is a switch in location, but still I'd just like to reinforce that this is a great thing for our community and for working moms, working parents.
Anything further?
And I agree with the comments of Councillor Penner. Their daycare, there aren't enough in Steinbach. I hear every day people struggling to find a place to put their children and stuff. Whether it's close to where they live or where they work, or there's just nothing available, period. So I think it's a good venture, and I look forward to it.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Okay. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we have 6B. This is bylaw 2213. This is referring to SW 176E. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For A brief history for council's benefit. This second reading and consideration of bylaw 2213 at the public hearing is a bit of a do-over. The public hearing and consideration for second reading was originally heard by council September 6th of 2022, and subsequent to the public hearing, it was determined that there was an error discovered in the map of the public hearing or the public notices that were issued. And as a result, with the corrected public notices issued, this is being brought back before council for reconsideration at the public hearing and also for reconsideration of second reading. Particulars of the file have not changed other than a previous objection that was filed at the time of the original public hearing by the arm of the brokery has been rescinded. That information is also provided on file. All other previous correspondence to this file from the original public hearing date remains. And in addition, for council's information, further objections or questions were registered by 4 landowners in addition to the written correspondence for this file. With respect to the application, under bylaw 2213, the owner of the property is 100147661 Manitoba Ltd., with the applicant for bylaw 2213 being Lowen Henderson Bandman Legault LLP. The purpose of bylaw 2213 is to rezone a portion of the subject parcel for the purposes of residential development. The developer is proposing to rezone a portion of the land from DR1 Development Reserve 1 to RLD Residential Low Density, RSF Residential Single Family, RHD Residential High Density, as is shown on the map in council's package on page 21, for the development of a multi-phase residential development. Notices as required to the Planning Act have been issued. There is no further correspondence on file other than what was noted previously. Recommendation from administration is that City Council give bylaw 2213 second reading, subject to a development agreement and subject to any new evidence that may be provided at the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak?
If there's any questions.
Okay, and we will, thank you. Is there anyone with questions, comments, or objections to this file? I'll ask again, is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make the motion to approve.
Okay, second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As was noted, this is more of a clerical error that occurred, and since no new information came forward at the meeting, I don't see any reason to change the original status of the approval.
Anything further?
I have nothing to add.
Anything further, council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Question for administration. We're just doing second reading. We're waiting for the other 4 objections, correct?
Well, actually, this file is related to 2 other bylaws, one being an official community plan amendment and the other being a second bylaw or subject to a rezoning for a different parcel, but part of the same overall development area. As the official community plan amendment requires minister approval before third reading can be provided, it is recommended that council wait until that correspondence is received and then would be able to deal with third reading for all 3 bylaws at one time.
Okay. Good. Council will go into 6C, which is the official community plan. This is bylaw 2216. Referring to number 6 First Street. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, the application for bylaw 2216, which is an application for an official community plan amendment for property with civic address being part of 78 PTH 52 West and 6 First Street in Steinbach. The owners of the properties are 100-83559 Manitoba Inc. and James Wientz. with the applicant for bylaw 2215 being 6204741 Manitoba, Inc. Purpose of bylaw 2215 is to redesignate a portion of 78 PTH 52 West and number 6 First Street from industrial policy area to residential policy area to allow for the land to be rezoned for the development of a 3-story multifamily building on the site. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There are 3 items of correspondence received for this file, 2 of which were provided to council members in their mail bins earlier today. One that was received late, for which we do have a copy that our city planner, Lacey Gaudette, is going to distribute to you at the moment. The comments also provided by Community Planning Branch indicates no provincial concerns with the proposed redesignation under bylaw 2216. And with respect to the file, recommendation from administration is to give bylaw 2216 second reading to allow for the bylaw to go to the minister for approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to take the podium?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Pardon? Yes, Troy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've just been advised by staff they require an official opening of the public hearing.
Okay, we'll close the public, or the council meeting, open the public hearing.
Correct. Thank you.
Go ahead, start, name and address, just for the record.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Mike Fast, 560 Henry Street in Steinbach. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Welcome back. Kind of exciting night, so kind of neat to be a part of. Happy to answer any questions on this. I was involved in the sale of the Mid-Canada Millwork building that was just adjacent to this, and noticed that it had a funny little triangular title, a second title at the front of this that was underutilized. Thought it might make sense for a good multifamily site, so in talking with administration, we talked to the neighbor and worked to combine these 2 sites. It does a couple things. It makes a really nice end of the cul-de-sac for a space that's been, currently underutilized. First Street, as you know, has gone through a ton of transformation over the last couple of years. Some really nice multifamily sites have been built along it, so I think it's consistent with what's already happening there. And it doesn't really affect a lot of adjacent parcels. You've got basically the Swift building to the west, and then you've got the highway beside it, and then a few other parcels just down this little short cul-de-sac. I believe that most of those parcels have been bought up by people that are interested in developing in the future as well. So I think that we're all going that direction, sooner or later. But it's, I guess, speculation a little bit. Happy to answer any questions that council has.
Are there any questions of council? Councillor Swaits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no indication on here that you're requesting any variances. Are you anticipating any variances requests in regards to either parking or number of units, or do you believe that you have a plan that fits within all the existing bylaw requirements if the rezoning went ahead?
Correct. We don't believe that we'll need any variances. We plan to work within the city bylaw.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you to administration. So right now it says it's zoned as industrial policy area.
Just to clarify the terminology that's using, it is the designated land use is industrial policy area. This is an official community plan amendment bylaw.
Okay.
And the rezoning bylaw is coming subsequent to this file.
Okay. As such, what kind of business could go there right now as it stands?
Well, that would be difficult because it is it's a combination of different land use designations. It's got partially designated as industrial policy area and partially designated as central business district policy area. They do allow different types of uses, and because of the split designation, that's what's prompting the change to amend so that it at least for the land that I believe the applicant is intending to develop, that it is an appropriate fit for the type of end use that they are suggesting.
So presumably, if he had a different plan, he could have asked for it all to be industrial policy area.
Perhaps that would be an option, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Seaman?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Fast.
Go ahead.
I see on your plan, this is actually the first step of this project process is to change it to the Central Business District, correct? Am I correct? That's what we're asking for here?
Yes, I believe so, and then subsequently rezoning.
And part of that under the Central Business District is we allow a zero lot line. And so the next step in the process will be the rezoning. But for me, the biggest issue I have here is the proximity to the sidewalk, to the property line. If you, in our documentation we're getting the two mixed up now, but the building is as far north to the property line as possible. And I think that's one of the biggest issues I have is that visibly, to me, it's not acceptable. Can you not back it off to put a buffer between your building and the highway?
Yeah, the city administration actually brought this up to us today and asked us to move this back by a little bit. I subsequently provided a new site plan that instead of having a 5-foot setback off that northern property line, we moved it back 3 feet to 8 feet. So I submitted a new site plan. I don't know if you have that yet, but we did put that back into circulation today.
Go ahead, Councillor Hebert.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Fast. I went and looked at that site again. This is the second time I've been over there looking at it closely. And I have the similar concerns that Councillor Siemens has. When you look down the sight line down the Highway 52, everything is backed way off the highway. And I noticed the house that's even there right now is at least a good 30 feet off the sidewalk. My concern here is you build this 3-story house right up near the sidewalk, even 8 feet away, you're blocking the view to First Street coming onto Highway 52 there by Tim Hortons. And I have trouble getting over the sight line that it's going to be that close to the highway. Is there any way that you would consider moving even further or possibly putting your parking lot there opposed to a building that obstructs the view?
Yeah, does administration?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, perhaps I can shed some light on this particular application to clarify. Under an official community plan amendment, that has no bearing as to the proximity to any proposed building to the respective property lines whatsoever. As an official community plan amendment, this particular bylaw seeks only to change the land use designation. The zoning bylaw amendment, which deals with particular uses such as commercial, industrial, residential, and those types of uses, those have provisions within it that regulate proximity for side yards. But under this particular bylaw, under 2216, it is only an official community plan amendment. It has no information or no policies that govern proximity for side yard requirements or yard requirements whatsoever. Just for council's information.
Yep. Okay, so that comes up in the rezoning.
That would be under the rezoning bylaw application under bylaw 2215. That is to follow this particular public hearing.
Okay, so this is just dealing with the OCP amendment.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Question to
So,
administration.
yeah, we're just dealing with the OCP amendment now, so go ahead.
So if this does go through, is council in any way restricted to obeying any setback at all?
Under official community plan provisions, there are no dimensional requirements in that policy bylaw document. It only relates to broad land use designations throughout the city. for matters related to zoning bylaw amendments, particular uses that may be sought by the applicant, as council will hear. Those then are subject to very particular dimensional requirements and any other requirements that are noted in the city's zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, was there anything further?
Further.
Any further questions of council? Okay. Okay, thanks. I'll ask if there's anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file. Yep, go ahead, take the podium, please.
Your Honor, honored councilors, I'm Carlin Marsden. I live at number 12 First Street, which is right next to the proposed land development, if I'm not mistaken, sir. My concern comes from the fact that I live within 5 paces of what will become now a destroyed house, I assume. Comes with noise violations and stuff like that that might be concerning to people in my household. We have pets, we have people that work late in our house that need to sleep during the day. As I understand it, construction projects generally work from 07 to 1800 hours. This might affect sleep schedules in my household. I just want to know what the plan was to kind of buffer that kind of noise.
As it's being built, you said?
Yes, sir.
And we'll let that be answered after. Just if that, we're dealing with the official community plan amendment right now. We're not dealing with the zoning or a building plan, but we will get you an answer for that, okay?
Thank you, sir. I misunderstood.
Thank you. Is there anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file? Okay.
Council, Mayor, my name is Evan Schrader. I work with Swift, the property in question, or the large property in question. When we first chatted with Mike last year as we acquired the MCM building, it was clear that we were not to expand operations on that triangular piece of land. And so we felt its designation was out of place, and we tried to assure the neighbors that the noise that comes with developing that piece would not be appropriate to their homes during business hours either. And so here we are today, hoping to zone it the appropriate way to allow for residential developments. The number of people looking for jobs in this area that can now walk to their work site is really important to us. And we'd like to see it used and not just have us mow it twice a week for the rest of our lives. Thank you for considering today.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is John Sawatsky, and I'm here to represent Loan Windows. And this is going to relate to bylaws 2215 and 2216, so there's going to be a bit of overlap. Loan Windows opposes the request of bylaws 2215 and 16 on the following grounds. The proposal involves pushing development closer to the sidewalk and street, and in this case, a major highway and approach to the city. Additional housing units this close to the highway will add to what is an already busy vehicle and pedestrian traffic in the area. The corner of Highway 52 and Giesbrecht Street is already an intersection of traffic and safety concern. Vehicle traffic leaving Steinbach to the west on Highway 52 rounds a corner and speeding up as it approaches this intersection. There's generally good visibility to the north side, although there was an approval just granted by the city to allow another building slightly closer to the highway. Further compounding the congestion is the increasing traffic exiting Giesbrecht Street turning left onto 52 West. Meanwhile, vehicle traffic coming from the west on 52 approaches the same intersection, slowing down, preparing for the same corner going into the city. While they need to be mindful of vehicular and pedestrian traffic entering and exiting not only the intersection, but the very busy gas station and Tim Hortons outlet right next to the intersection. Traffic is frequently backed up and stopped on the highway and on Giesbrecht Street, causing a safety concern. There is significant pedestrian traffic as well as vehicular traffic entering and exiting the approach to Lone Windows and the Barkman Concrete outlet on the north side of that intersection at various times of the day. We have concerns for our staff and their safety and well-being. This development would reduce visibility as traffic approaches that intersection in an already congested area. We feel it's unsafe. Finally, it's unsightly. This is regarding some of the sightlines which have already been discussed. We have a beautiful city that's occasionally spoiled by less than ideal development, and we appreciate the need for more housing units in the city. However, when buildings are built too close to the road or sidewalks and allowances, they become unsightly and unsafe. As previously mentioned, Lone Windows opposes this request.
Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections? Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you to administration. The request here is to move it into the CBD. Why wouldn't we, as an option, have it as a residential policy area?
If I could refer Councillor Siemens, I would refer you to page 44, although there is a sketch there, although it is not actually labeled on that sketch itself. You'll see the map of the general area being separated by dashed lines. The dashed lines that run for the area that starts at the midpoint of PTH 52 West and runs a little bit further south, basically to run through the intersection of Giesbrecht Street and First Street. That particular area is already designated as Central Business District Policy Area, and the area further to the south of that is designated as Residential Policy Area. The position of administration and the recommendation was, rather than have an island of residential policy area with this proposal, the extension of the Central Business District Policy Area, which also permits residential development, was more appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections? Okay, at this time, I will ask Mr. Fass if you want to answer some of the questions that were asked. There was a gentleman from number 12 that had a noise question.
Yeah, we're certainly a long way away from construction on something like this. There's a long road to go on this, so I can't address that, today with any level of intelligence, but we would certainly work within the city's noise bylaws to make sure that we didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We want to be good neighbors. Just addressing some of the sight lines, I think that those are important questions. They make sense. And if you did take a look at that intersection there, if you stand on the corner, there's a pretty serious wall of trees there right now. So I didn't actually physically go measure them myself, and you can see kind of how close that house is to the corner of that lot. I don't think that's going to change significantly once we put something there. And like I said, we backed the building back by 3 more feet. So we were at 5 feet originally with this application, and today we've backed it back to 8 feet. So we've come a bit of the distance, and I don't think we're going to see a big impact from the difference from what you see the trees as they are today.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one more time if there are any comments, questions, or objections to this file. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Council Spicer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion for second reading on this file.
Second by Councilor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep my comments specifically on the official community plan, because that's the portion of the application we're dealing with at the moment. And the official community plan sets the course of the city. It's the planning document that we need to follow. It's approved by the province. Anytime we make a change to the official community plan, it has to be approved by the minister. In this case here, the request is to change the designation from industrial policy area to central business district policy area. And there is an upcoming rezoning application that's coming that we'll be dealing with in just a few moments. But specifically on this, I think administration answered the question very well about why for central business district policy area rather than residential. It's because we want to keep land uses as consistent as possible, and it makes sense for planning purposes to simply extend the central business district, this portion here. Again, the applicant is consolidating two properties, and so we need to make sure in order for any development to happen, you have to have a consistent designation in the official community plan. That's why we're doing this here. The other aspect of it we will deal with in just a couple minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Swick. Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and myself as well. I'll echo the comments of right now we're dealing with our official community plan. We're not dealing with what necessarily may or may not get built there. That's coming with the congruent public hearing, and sometimes it can get a little bit interesting in terms of or a little challenging of keeping the two designations separate. So right now we're talking about the official community plan. I feel like it makes sense to move that tiny piece of industrial into the central business district because at this time it is a lot that really does not have any future purpose as an industrial lot. In the future being amalgamated into residential lots under the central business district makes sense. So right now I think it's more important to have a larger residential lot than it is to have a fractured, unusable piece of industrial in our official community plan.
Thank you very much. Anything further of council?
I will vote against the motion. I think for a variety of reasons. The Central Business District policy area that was created, it was done so to promote business in the downtown core area. And this is on the extreme western piece of that. The intent was to encourage new general and specialty retail office outlets, office buildings, and administrative services. Council of the day, when we built that, we were looking to have 2 or 3 story buildings in height with a bottom floor being retail space and upper was to be residential. That was the vision, to gain height on our main street. And we did run the CBD all the way out to the current location. But here we go back again to the building setback in a CBD is 0 lot line. And that was done so that the buildings along Main Street could abut the property line on the front and the customers would park on the street or in the rear of the buildings. And if we allow this change to the CBD, that means council no longer has a say in the building location unless we do it through the zoning and put a special requirement in. But my fear here is that we allow the CBD to be there, then council no longer has an opinion or has a say in exactly that, the building location. That's my biggest issue. The property to the immediate east is green space owned by the city, and at this point we have no plans to sell that property for development. The land to the west is zoned industrial policy area, and this request subsequently is a residential build. That's going to be the request here, so I don't think it quite fits. I think this is an odd situation, but in my opinion, this change is not part of the long-term vision that I have for that area.
Thank you. Councillor Penner.
I will support the motion. It makes more sense to consolidate it into central business district policy area than into industrial policy area. So I'll support the motion as it stands right now. Nothing can be done with that land. So yeah, to me, it just makes more sense that it all becomes CBD.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Siemens had mentioned what the Council of the Day had done with the Central Business District. With Councillor Siemens, I was part of that Council of the Day, and part of the discussion was a recognition that the Central Business District would eventually expand over time. There was never an intention to say that the Central Business District will remain that exact location and will never grow. So when a city grows, so does the Central Business District. Again, the question here is, does it make more sense to allow a slight expansion of the CBD, so that way the land use has the potential to be consistently used, or does it make more sense to keep that as industrial? And I don't think anyone here is making a case for industrial. It's certainly not what we would designate it now in the community plan in terms of if it was just as a blank slate. So it makes sense to allow the change to CBD.
Thank you, Councillor Schweitzer. Council, when we separate the two bylaws, the OCP amendment to the rezoning, then to me, it makes sense for this to be rezoned to the central business district, because as industrial, nothing can be done with it. It'll stay there, it'll just be mowed, to every other week or something like that. It'll never be land that will be utilized to its full potential. So whether the apartment complex gets built or not, I do believe that if we do change the zoning to, or change the, in the official community plan to the central business district, the land does become more usable. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, council, we'll go to 6D. This is bylaw 2215. This is a rezoning of number 6 First Street. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 2215 represents an application to rezone part of 78 PTH 52 West and number 6 First Street. In Steinbach, the owners of the properties are 100-83559 Manitoba Inc. and James Wiens. The applicant of bylaw 2215 is 620-4741 Manitoba Inc. Purpose of bylaw 2215 is to rezone a portion of 78 PTH 52 West and 6 First Street from RLD residential low density to RMD residential medium density to allow for the development of a 3-story multifamily building on the site. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. As mentioned in the previous related file, there are 3 items of written correspondence received on this file, 2 of which council received earlier today in their mail bins and 1 which was handed out just a few minutes ago. With respect to this particular application, the subject property includes, as I mentioned, 6 First Street and a portion of 78 PTH 52 West. The applicant proposes to build 22 to 24 units in the complex. The subject property is designated as a mix of central business district and industrial areas under the city's official community plan, subject to the previous amendment. It is the intent of the central business district policies to provide for a mix of residential uses within the district that encourage a core population in the area. Just for background's sake, City Council has considered several rezoning applications in this general neighborhood along First Street since 2018, with approximately 100 multifamily units being permitted over the past 5 years. The intent of this application is that the subject property will have its access provided from First Street, despite the fact that this property also abuts PTH 52 West. With respect to the council's information, I would like to point out in this particular case, about midway through the report provided by the city planner, Lacey Godet, on page 47, it does indicate, and it highlights the proposed rezoning requirements for RMD residential medium density, as this property is considered a corner lot. I would point out that side yard requirements for corner lots require an 8-foot setback from property line. I believe that would be of particular interest for council's information. With respect to zoning bylaw 2215, recommendation from administration is that council give this bylaw second reading subject to a development agreement and subject to any new evidence that may be provided at the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Okay, so the applicant is here. Do you wish to speak? Any questions? Okay. Okay. Council, are there any questions for the applicant? Councilor Penner? Looks like you'll have to take the podium.
Yeah.
Thank
Go
you, Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, through you. You had referenced the site plan, and we do not have that updated in our file. Do you by any chance have printed copies on hand?
I didn't print, I only have 1 copy here for myself, but I did, do you guys have some? I did submit them to the city today. They asked me for that change and we did get that back to them. So now it reflects 8 feet rather than 5 feet.
So essentially, it's just a shift over in terms of the footprint and everything. It still remains the same as what was submitted?
It's a shift away from PTH 52 West. The footprint would have to decrease to accommodate it. So instead of it being 5 feet from the property edge on 52 West, it would now be 8 feet.
And your building is decreased by 3 feet? Okay,
Yeah, it must be.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? Okay. Is anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file? Okay. Take the podium.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here tonight. I wanted to also thank you for, well, what I got to witness before. I'd never actually seen that before. I'm not sure if that's standard protocol every time, but that was really special to see. I wanted to make it clear and state that my name's Luke Weeb. I live in the arm of LaBrokery just south of Steinbach. I'm a developer. I'm pro-development. I'm also very pro proper planning. And I do admire all of you as councillors and the city planner and Mr. Troy Workington in the efforts that you put in to try to make sure to do your very best, as you stated today in your oaths, to do what you can to make sure everything is done right. I don't oppose rezoning this property to commercial or multifamily RMD. However, I do believe that some of the bylaws and community plan that you have as far as landscape buffers and many things that were already said tonight have not been addressed in this plan. And for you to not even have a plan that shows something that, you know, like this, that could fit on here with the amount of units that is proposed in this building, I think it's a bit premature. I'm personally not opposed to it being rezoned, if that makes sense, but I would just like to see some of these things as a property owner to the direct south of those properties there. I would just like to see some of these things rectified before you're actually making a decision on it. I think that would be wise, and that way you'd have all the facts. That's basically all I'd like to say.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. I have a question for administration. Mr. Workington, at this time, there is no development agreement for this property?
No, that process, it isn't created at time of initial application. However, prior to final city communication of the official decision, if council chooses to approve this rezoning, those documents would need to be required and completed, and the development agreement completed before final certificate of approval is issued.
And the concerns that Mr. Weeb has would then be dealt with through that process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Come take the podium.
Not to mention, I just saw on the site plan there, this is a different site plan. I don't know if Mr. Workington could switch back to the actual elevated site plan, the 2D site plan. There was a mention, I think it was Mr. Siemens that asked if there was any variance, or one of you did. Is my understanding that the site plan shows 70 feet and your bylaws are 75 feet for multifamily. The frontage along Highway 52 is not in, from what I've read in your bylaws, part of the First Street frontage. So it does not meet that frontage. You don't have an exit or entrance off of 52. Therefore, the frontage is First Street, as was mentioned. And that would, from what I've understood, so I just would like to, not that I'd have a problem with the variance, but if that's something you'd have to deal with later, I think it should be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, once again, a question to administration. Will there be a variance required for this?
I'm not sure of what the actual dimensions of the file are or of the property. However, that would be subject to an overall review of administration as this file proceeds through any approval process that council deems appropriate.
Okay. Is there anyone else here with comments, questions, or objections?
Evan Schrader, I work with Swift. I was concerned on this image that the traffic in the right lane is a stereotypical Steinbach driver and is going backwards down the highway. If we zoom out here, though, we'll see that the setbacks aren't as bad as it looks, considering the width of this highway. We've also allocated a parking lot between the building and the neighbor, again, to remove the noise from being directly behind their home. So that was all contemplated in our discussions with Mike last summer already. And so we're trying to do what we can to give distance to the homeowners, but still allow for multi-dwelling. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Council Spacer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion for second reading of the rezoning.
Second by Councilor Penner. Go ahead, councilors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As with any public hearing, we have to take into account both the presentation by the applicant as well as any concerns that are expressed by the by the neighborhood. And in this case here, on balance, I believe that this is a good project. There has been a lot of redevelopment along First Street. There have been previous rezonings to a medium density. We've had some good developments that have happened along that area. As far as some of the concerns that have been raised, some of those have already been partially addressed here in regards to the setback, already going back to 8 feet as opposed to 5 feet, so it's not literally right up against the street. And again, we recognize that there continues to be a need for more homes within Steinbach, including multifamily. And so the property as it is right now consists of a couple single-family homes. And that's essentially how it is going to remain indefinitely if some sort of redevelopment doesn't happen there. And so this does seem like the type of logical redevelopment that would happen. And so I think it's appropriate to approve the rezoning.
Thank you. Anything further, Councilor Penner?
Yes, thank you. As Councillor Swagster mentioned, this fits in well with the neighborhood. There's been a lot of redevelopment in that neighborhood. And what it also does that we look for is RMD is often something we like to use for a buffer between, let's say, industrial and residential or commercial and residential, and that's what this does. It's also great for that area. There's a lot of jobs in that area, and I do like the idea of people being able to, live there and walk to their places of employment. And finally, I would just like to say, as council, we kind of look at the big picture, make those big picture decisions in terms of micromanaging specific details of every project. That's not really our role when we look at projects like this. So we have, administration has bylaws and guidelines that they follow. So I think it's appropriate that we, approve this as a concept and not get weighed down by, the details.
Anything further, Council? Councilor Penner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do just want to I will vote in favor of the motion, but I do also just want to make note that there were considerable objections based on the traffic, which is understandable. I've driven by that as many other individuals have. And there may be a time that we will need to really strongly consider the traffic impact on Giesbrecht and 52. However, we already have as a council, we've already requested lights. And so at this time, I feel we can move forward on this project. And then once the lights are up, which will be up well in advance of this being in completion, we can start analyzing the traffic after we've already put some traffic improvements into that intersection.
Thank you. Anything further, Council? Councilor Seine?
I'll vote against the motion as it stands on I think the buffer between the highway and the building needs to be a minimum of 30 feet. But, and I still feel that that's something that would be required. The building will look out of place there. And so I do think that, that's how I feel anyway. So and as part of the administration report from the city planner on page 48 does say that there's an overall review of the intersection that's happening as well. So that is one of the critical intersections in Steinbach. Is quickly becoming one of the focus intersections. There is a lot of traffic issues in that area that we need to address in the future as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilor.
through administration, through you.
Go ahead.
A question I have, if being residential low density right now, to move it to residential medium density, what is the difference in setback off Highway 52? Or is it the same?
It isn't a setback requirement because it's Highway 52 for, in this case, it relates to the setback requirements as to whether a lot is designated front yard setback or side yard. And there are unique rules with respect to side yard for a regular lot versus side yard for what's considered a corner lot. So that review will be completed, and it will be communicated to the developer as they, if council approves the bylaw, and as they would then proceed through their development process.
Could both of those be 4-foot setbacks, like on the side setback? Or whatever is facing 52? The directions are a little off kilter there, but.
Well, and when you have an irregular lot, it does require further review. At this point, that I don't think has been entirely confirmed, but that is a process that the city's administration would be going through and confirming as the process proceeds.
And of course, the bigger picture here is it's all going to be one parcel eventually. That is the plan.
That is the intent.
Thank you.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Well, council, there's been good debate on this issue, this file. I do feel that it's still a good fit, and I think the rezoning, it's a good thing to rezone this to the CBD or to the RMD, and I'm going to support this because I do believe the comments that were said today are true. We do need multifamily. It's great to live right close to where you used to work, where you work. I used to do that. I lived on Lumber, and it was a half a block from City Hall and a block away from my own business, and it was great. I could actually forget about a meeting, still be on time. And so that's what, it's great to be close to where you work. And I think this area obviously is showing it needs the multifamily. It's a great transition from industrial to residential. And for that reason, I will support it. Also, Mr. Weeb, you brought up many concerns, but I know for a fact, and I think you've probably experienced it too, our staff are very good at following our bylaws, our setbacks, what we require, what is needed for buildings to go forward. You have developed, so you will have noticed that firsthand, that they're a great team to work with. And they do protect the city, and that's job one, to protect the city. So I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 6E, this is bylaw 2217, this is rezoning on 205 McKenzie Avenue. I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workstein, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For members of council, bylaw 2217 is a rezoning bylaw being applied for 205 McKenzie Avenue in Steinbach. The owners of the property are Eliezer and Rebecca Legaspo. The applicant of bylaw 2217 is Kingdom Home Building, Inc. Purpose of the bylaw is to rezone the subject property from RLD residential low density to RMD residential medium density to allow for the construction of a 4-unit multifamily building on the site. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There are 21 items of written correspondence received for this file, copies of which were provided to council in their mail bins earlier this afternoon. With respect to the application, the property currently contains a single-family dwelling with the proposal to develop this into a 4-unit multifamily structure. The property is located more or less across the street from the Steinbach Regional School. The recommendation from administration is to give bylaw second reading, subject to any new evidence presented at the public hearing, and and also subject to a development agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Worthington. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Take the podium. You know the drill. State your name and address.
One extra. Hello again. My name's Luke Weeb with Kingdom Home Building, Inc. I'm coming here on behalf of Miss Rebecca Legaspo. 205 McKenzie, currently an older home owned by my client, Rebecca. If you go to page 3, sorry, there we go. Okay. As you know, I'm an advocate for infill housing with a passion to beautify and utilize land within downtown established neighborhoods. Our plan is to create a beautiful home for our client and her 2 sons. This will allow them the opportunity as homeowners to rent a neighboring home to another family, as well as 2 smaller 1-bedroom units to help fulfill the high demand for affordable rentals. You can see the 3D rendering there. Oh, actually, that's a real photo of a building similar, except a larger one that I built. Houses with 2 1-bedroom basement units. As you can see on page 4, the Legaspo family, Rebecca Legaspo and her sons. She has 2 adult sons. Her husband, Elizar Legaspo, passed away 2 years ago today at only 53 years old. So she has stepped up to lead her 2 young adult sons who are both working full-time within the community. She recently contacted me with hopes to help accomplish her dream to own a new home and also some rental units to help provide future stability. I'm honored to be a part of that plan. This is a great building that I've already built that does that. I've never done it for a client, but it's a great option for somebody to own a home that is not much larger than a duplex, but has, instead of an unfinished or finished basement, it has 2 one-bedroom units. I should mention they have private entry from outside. You can see the 4 doors. So every home, every unit, the 2 basement units will also have private entry from outside. Next page there, you can see the Legaspo family. And I guess second or third to last page, 3-bedroom townhome and 1-bedroom. Home ownership is becoming more and more difficult, as you know, and interest rates and inflation make it very difficult for people. This property will provide additional income and future stability, as I mentioned earlier. It will provide an excellent 3-bedroom townhome for another family, and then the 2 1-bedroom units. The plan meets the requirements of 7 stalls plus 2 garages as well. So if I didn't have any garages, I know that tandem parking does not count, but the fact is the owners or the tenant and the owner that live in the townhouse will have that extra stall in front as well as another stall. Then there will be a visitor as well. So that's great. It provides ample green space in the backyard, 25 feet, and we've positioned the building where it is so that we can use the existing driveway as well as maintain the large trees that are on the east property line. So there's some very big trees there that we'd like to keep. What else? I do believe there's a 1-foot variance request. 75 feet is what your bylaws state, and it is 74-foot wide lot. So yeah. I just want to continue to build properties in Steinbach that I'd be proud to call home, and I truly mean that. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you tonight. Thank you. Any questions?
Are there any questions, council, for the applicant? Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here tonight with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, take the podium, state your name and address, please.
My name's Corey Kowalczyk. I live at 478 Cottonwood Bend. I want to congratulate you all on your re-election and acclamation, and it was an honor to actually see the swearing in tonight, so that was great. The neighborhood residents also want to thank you for supporting us with some of the parking challenges last year, and it's greatly improved things, so thanks from the neighborhood. So anyways, I'm the resident, once again, representing the majority of the in-proximity residents of Cottonwood Drive, Cottonwood Bend, and McKenzie Avenue in regard to bylaw 2217. As you know, it's a proposed application to rezone the subject property from residential low density to residential medium density for the construction of the fourplex. We, and as your people behind me mentioned, 21 so far. I got another one today, so it's 22 that I'll hand to Lacey. Object to the passing of this bylaw for the following reasons. The likely adverse impact to the property values of the immediate surrounding and neighborhood single-family homes. All the homes in that area are residential, low density. Looking at the maps you have posted in your official Steinbach community plan. The neighborhood property owners, and these are things that came together from different meetings and phone calls we had within the last week. We only really had 9 days to put this together. We purchased our homes based on residential low-density zoning and not residential medium density. The setting of a precedent that could result in the continuance of such bylaw approvals in a residential low density within our neighborhood. So we don't want that precedent set. There are multiple privacy and noise concerns to the adjacent lot homeowners. The property density does not conform to the neighborhood, which is predominantly residential low density, single family or duplex housing. The negative impact to traffic, when you think about the picture that was up there with a parking lot of 7 stalls and 2 garage stalls, right next to that walking path, 2 feet away from the crosswalk to the high school. You all know what that traffic jam is like at school start, noon hour, and after school. You know, your bylaw officer, I've become pretty close with him, and he spends a lot of time on McKenzie trying to get cars out of that 2-hour parking. But just the amount of traffic for family members and students crossing there, and they're going to leave that existing driveway there. We're concerned about the students and pedestrians with the increased traffic flow of up to 9 vehicles entering and exiting the property. Conflicts with zoning land use and the official community plan guidelines such as setbacks. When you look at the picture, most homes are 20 to 25 feet setback. When you look at the picture going back there, it's 45 feet on the left side, 43 or 42 feet on the other side. So think about another 20 feet back from what all the majority of the existing homes on McKenzie are like. The proposed development does not conform to the zoning bylaw and some of the official community plan. The lot at 205 McKenzie Avenue does not meet the minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. When you calculate it out, it's really 8,800 square feet. And as he's already mentioned, minimum frontage should be 75 feet. That's only 74, so he would be asking for a variance there. Which brings to a question that I didn't have written down. With the gigantic trees that are probably 50 feet tall right on the lot line with the house next to it, which would be on your right, it'd be difficult to put buffers of any sort because they're about 2 feet around, or a fence of any significant height. The maximum lot cover does exceed 50% when including the building unit and driveway parking stalls. See zoning bylaw table 4.1. I couldn't find the fine print or details whether lot coverage would include that either concrete or pavement driveway, because I did go look at other buildings on First Avenue that the builder had built. I went there today and took some pictures. The front yard building alignment does not conform with the existing front yards, I already mentioned. There's little or no information confirmation on all the required buffering compliance bylaws from section 191.1 through 194.1 and 189.1 through 190.1. There is no information on lot grading and lot grading bylaw compliances, as the walking path is currently above the 205 McKenzie lot level. It's roughly 1.5 feet lower. Should it be increased in height, this will likely cause above ground water drainage to overflow into the walking path. The official community plan on infill development bylaw 2217 does not comply with sections 2.1.1 through 2.1.3. So the 23 of us, or 22 of us, neighborhoods, and I just want to mention this. In this day and age, I know as being right near the property, I had to sign for my notification. But most houses, and there was 3 families going door to door over the last 3 or 4 days, they check their mailboxes like once a month because they have all their mail and their hydro bills and their charge cards all delivered by email. Just a suggestion in the future, not that it makes a difference here, but maybe serving everybody within that 100-meter distance to sign for it, because a lot didn't know. But anyways, going back, based on the foregoing that I just mentioned, we are respectively requesting that the application of bylaw 2217 be declined by council. We have no obligation to the development of the property for either a single-family home or a duplex. In addition to that, we're asking that the next public hearing to be postponed 60 to 90 days in order to acquire, confirm, and review new or additional information, which I've been having phone calls and questions with of all kinds of different things, and I've almost got a full page of additional questions that tonight would not be appropriate to give you. Which would also allow us time to request the Manitoba Assessment Branch in Steinbach to provide data on the impact of the immediate surrounding properties and neighborhood residential valuation results from bylaw 2217. And we're also asking that the city complete a traffic impact study which includes the impact of the pedestrian walkway and signaled high-traffic crosswalk on McKenzie Avenue. Bylaw 2217 and its development would unduly impair the present and potential capability of the adjoining street. And I just put see official community plan section 3.2.11. We've had only a limited amount of time to summarize our concerns to this development proposal. We are hopeful that our preliminary submission and request to decline bylaw 2217 will be supported by Mayor Funk and City Councilors. Thank you, the neighborhood residents.
Thank you. So you are, yeah, I guess they are authorizing you to speak for them, all 20?
Yeah, and we have a couple here. Some just left for their snowbird vacations in Arizona. Others have gone to Vegas that would have been here, but planes were already booked, well in advance of 10 days ago when the mailings came out. But if I even had more time, I'm sure I can go from 24 to 35. And when you do how many residents are in that 100-meter, it's definitely the high majority, over 60%. Right now, I'm probably over 50%. So, and they all signed off. You have their phone numbers, their emails, you have everything there. And they also wrote additional comments on each one of their submissions that was probably on top of what I just read as the group presentation. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here with comments, questions, or objections? Okay, take the podium.
I'm sorry for my English, it's my first language. But I need to say, a mom, I live across the sidewalk, the street, the pedestrians go, and it's really, really busy. And you can see the kids 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning going at this way. Imagine 7 cars there. When they go out, the kids, I don't want that my girls have had an accident for this. And I like the life that my girls, I don't want that anybody go hurt, less my girls. So similar among my thinking is what is safe for our kids and what is safe for other students in the high school. I know that we had issues with the smoking people there, but another people is not smoking there and walking every day there. So thinking in these people, what is safe thing for them. When we buy the house, we buy in the reason that we had a land because it's how the construction before is bigger size. So you can feel, you can breathe a huge space. And these people, they had a house before, they can feel the freedom, they had huge space in the backyard. And now the big construction next to these people, I don't like. I lose my privacy. And you like lose your privacy? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay. We'll give it back to Mr. Weeb if you want to answer any of those objections.
Yeah, thank you.
Answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the residents for giving their strong opinions of objection to this matter. I was simply hired by somebody that wanted to put a home on their property that they could rent out. I'm presenting that information as best I can. I do understand that there are 2 duplexes right in the direct vicinity, as well as multiple multifamily units across the street and to the left, to the west, I guess that would be. This property is one of the older homes on McKenzie Street. And as I've mentioned in the past, infill homes or infill properties that are older homes that are becoming derelict, or they're not becoming attainable for people to pay the price and try to renovate them. So that's the difficult thing. And some of these wider, larger lots, it does make sense from a city and development standpoint. I'd also like to say I was just in Vancouver recently and Victoria, and I've seen in other communities as well in Manitoba, speed bumps. This is something that the city could look at. I mean, I grew up going to school on this street, and it's been busy ever since I was, 20 some years ago when I graduated. It was really busy then already. So that's not something that I'm discounting. I'm saying that it's not. However, if you look at my plan, you will see that many of these driveways are individual car width driveways along all that street. And from the standpoint of not volume, but sheer, if any individual that lives on that street that backs out of that onto that street, it's my personal opinion that is more dangerous than the way our parking lot will be. Our parking lot will have everybody be able to actually back into the lane and drive out. So every individual that would be leaving this lot, I would be feel very confident that they would be safer than people that back out directly onto McKenzie. So we will obviously want to follow all your bylaws and policies as far as drainage and all those things like we always do. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Through you.
Sure.
A question I have for you. How far from the sidewalk will your garage be, the front of the garage?
Yeah, it shows it on the plan. I believe it is, let me look at the larger one there, 42 feet. So some of the larger homes, like the 2 houses down from the left, that's quite a bit larger, looks to be almost, the back of that house would be very close. Actually, both of those. This current house is much smaller. So her house is actually just to the right of that walkway there. You can see her house is closer to the front actually currently than those other ones because they're much bigger homes, duplexes. I think the one directly to the west is a duplex, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's 2 houses down.
Her house is 24 feet.
Okay, yeah, okay, so 25 or 24 feet is what this gentleman's mentioning. That's
So my question is, from the sidewalk to the front of the garage, 45 feet?
42 feet. Sorry, 45 feet according to this plan. Yep, 45, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's it?
Okay, any other
questions
questions
for me?
Council? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask one more time. If there's any questions or comments or objections to this file. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed?
A motion to deny.
We have a seconder for that?
No, that's fine.
Yes, that's Dan. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Swagstra,
I'll make a motion to approve.
second by?
We're going to have to do something one way or the other.
Councilor Penner. Go ahead, Councilor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we have the application here is to rezone from residential low density to residential medium density. As always with the public hearing, there's a variety of factors that we take into consideration. And I'm just looking at some of the concerns that have been expressed. And obviously when there's a change in a neighborhood, that there always will cause questions and concerns. And I think the applicant has done a good job of addressing many of those questions. It's important for us to keep in mind the scope of what the project is. This is to essentially go from 1 home to having 4 units. That's what the change is. And so as far as the traffic impact, we have 1 or 2 cars going to 4 to 8, essentially is what the impact is as far as the traffic goes. The reality is that when you have some of these large lots, particularly in some of the more established areas of the city, and particularly when they're near major streets such as McKenzie Avenue, in order for new homes to be built there, in order for redevelopment to occur, it does not make economic sense to tear down a single-family home and simply replace it with a single-family home when you're dealing with a massive lot. And so if there ever is going to be any kind of redevelopment on these types of properties, it is going to be where you have a higher level of density. And so as far as the impact on the neighborhood, the impact is not zero, but I believe the impact is minor because, again, in terms of the number of cars, that is the number of cars. The primary traffic along McKenzie Avenue is obviously people driving along McKenzie Avenue. And so certainly the plans have been presented, be partially homeowner living there, partially rental. That's what has been presented. I think that's a reasonable use of the property. So again, going from 1 home to 4, this is definitely on the minor side when we're talking about medium density. There's no change in terms of in terms of what the height will be compared to some of the neighboring properties. I mean, because again, it's not going up 3 stories. And so I believe it's appropriate for us to move ahead with the rezoning.
Thank you, Councillor Schweitzer. Anything further, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the sentiments that Councillor Zwagstra said, and to follow up on a couple of the other objections that were here. One of them was drainage issues. And if anything, what we have noticed in the past when there's redevelopment that happens, these lots have been untouched, some of them for 30, 40 years when it comes to drainage. And as they are redeveloped and made new, they have to submit a lot drainage plan to the city that has to be approved by the city that they are keeping their drainage and their water onto their property. So what we often see is when old lots get developed, the drainage actually usually improves for the properties around them. Traffic, again, I don't see 3 or 4 additional cars making that much of an impact on the traffic when it comes to McKenzie and having a student body of 1,800 right across the street from it. So it is a high traffic area already. I don't feel that that is a challenge that is going to be stressed due to the additional lots. And then also, there's safety that has been addressed, and I strongly don't believe that there's going to be an impact on safety having 3 more units there. I think that's a situation that has been brought to council, that council has been working on, along with the neighborhood, with what we have done at Cottonwood so far, and may have to further reevaluate. But I don't feel like adding the 3 units is going to be impacting the safety. I think it's circumstances that are outside of moving to a RMD zoning. So for those reasons, I'll second the motion.
Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel it's difficult to make this decision, but I'm going to support it as well for a number of reasons. We wouldn't have to have a rezoning if somebody built a duplex. So you could easily have a duplex there. In this case, the parking lot, the way it's set up, people do not have to back onto McKenzie. And 2 of them are bachelor suites. So a duplex could be 2 full families, 2 bachelor suites adds 2 people, a possibility of 2 cars. So I think this is actually going to be better in the long run. I don't think it's going to devaluate the neighborhood personally.
Go ahead, Councillor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I was asking the question on the setback on the garage was, again, I'm concerned about the sight line, especially in view of the number of children that are walking to the high school and stuff. And I'm satisfied that this building is set back far enough that there is no added danger to any of the pedestrians in that area. Having said that, I would like to thank the people that came here and voiced their opinions on this or their thoughts on this, and even the ones that didn't, that signed the petitions but weren't able to attend here. I thank them for their input, and things like that assist council when people from the public come here and give us their input. This has been an interesting election where we weren't able to go door to door, so to have people come in here and voice their opinions on different things is welcomed. Thank you.
Anything further, council? Sorry, the public hearing's closed. Okay. Councilor Siemens?
I'll vote against the motion. I'll take the position of the people that live in that area and know that area. I've spent a little bit of time this fall in that area. We had made some decisions regarding the Cottonwood walkway and so on, and I've been doing some drive-throughs through there to see. It's an extremely busy area. I think a duplex makes more sense to me. I agree with a large lot. What do you do with a large lot when homes need to be replaced? But this is, it's an extremely busy intersection between cars and pedestrian traffic, and I think a duplex makes more sense to me, but I'll side with the homeowners that have signed the petition.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? No. Well, council, this is a bit of a difficult one. I've also spent some time in the neighborhood, and I've seen the turmoil that has happened in the neighborhood at the sidewalk and with the school, and that's becoming to a resolve, and we're working on it. We'll continue to work on that further, and that will be good. As far as the traffic, man, I don't know. 40 years ago when I went to high school there, it was busy as well. That was one of the busiest streets, I think, that I ever knew, besides Main Street. It's always been busy. 4 cars will not make a big difference. It's not for those reasons why I'm not going to support the motion. I just don't feel at this point I'm ready to go with that kind of development in this area. I agree, maybe the house needs to be redeveloped. Yeah. Maybe at this time, a side-by-side would work better than a fourplex. I could maybe see that. So I will probably, I will vote against the motion, and that's just how we'll go. We'll go to the question, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, can we get some air conditioning in here?
It is hot in here. Oof.
There is no?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, council, we've got 8A. This is reports and recommendations from city manager. This is Southeast Event Center. Information to follow. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
With pleasure.
Where is
City Council was provided an information package from administration earlier today, which is quite lengthy, with several documents related to it attached. And it is with respect to a report from administration regarding recommendation to award tender for the anticipated Southeast Event Center project in Steinbach. The tender for this project closed on September 13th, 2022, with 3 bids received. The initiating decision of City Council on October 1st of 2019 prompted the City of Steinbach, along with a memorandum of understanding that Council authorized to enter into with Southeast Event Center, Inc., which became Southeast Events Group, Inc., grew from that memorandum of understanding, and the project team has been working on this particular file since that date. Recommendation from the project consultants, Vern Reimer Architecture Incorporated, is to award the tender to Graham Construction and Engineering, Inc. For the amount of $75,331,000, less project scope reductions as noted through the guaranteed maximum price proposal and to funding availability. Based on all components of the project, estimated costs exceeded the available funding as was approved by Council back in 2019. Now, this prompted a review by City's administration, the project team, consisting of representatives of SEG, the City's consultants, and also Graham Construction and Engineering, Inc., to identify areas where the scope of work could be reduced or the specification of work amended to reduce the project costs but retain as many of the original design components as possible and still be able to proceed with the project. Subject to further review and negotiations, recommended revisions under the guaranteed maximum price proposal provided by Graham Construction, totaling $14,331,000, as is attached, would result in a project contract award amount of $61 million. The key areas of revision include changes to mechanical and electrical components and specifications, building envelope finishes, site revisions, and that the project proceed as one phase rather than in two stages. Now, in order to proceed in one phase, this would require the demolition of the existing Centennial Rink during the summer of 2023 and result in only one ice surface, being the T.G. Smith Ice Rink, being available for use by the community during the 2023-24 winter season. Although this would reduce the availability of ice for all community-based ice programming for the next winter season, the city is prepared, as far as administration, to work with all user groups to determine an appropriate modified ice schedule usage for that season. The city would then also be asking these user groups to arrange for any additional access to ice usage in other communities. And at the end of the day, recommendation from administration is to award the tender to Graham Construction and Engineering, Inc., being the low bid, for a reduced scope of work as noted, for a guaranteed maximum price of $61 million plus applicable taxes. A further recommendation is for City Council to approve that additional city funding of up to $11.4 million be provided from its reserve funds, and up to an additional $1.785 million be provided from its operating fund as proposed, and also that Council authorize the option for administration to create the additional borrowing authority, subject to Council's review and approval, to take the place of reserve and operating funding to cover the additional costs required to complete the project as a contingency measure if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. That was a long introduction, but having said that, this project is what we worked on for 4 years. Well, we talked about it for 12, then we worked on it for 4. Right. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Spicer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that we award the tender to Graham Construction and Engineering, Inc. For a guaranteed maximum price of $61 million plus applicable taxes.
I'll second. Second by Councilor Siemens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is project is a long time coming. It is by far the largest project that we've ever done in our history as a city. The largest project we've done prior to this point is the secondary water treatment plant, a total of $11 million. As we can see, the tenders came in well above what the 2019 numbers were that we had when we initially decided to proceed with this project. I don't think any of us are surprised that the numbers are higher. I mean, to expect that that projections from 2019 would be the same in 2022 when we consider, you know, the inflation that we've seen, the supply chain challenges, and just the general increase in construction costs. That is not surprising. Nevertheless, the initial tenders came in very high indeed, and I commend our staff for doing an incredible amount of work to reduce the amount. The initial lowest bid came in at $75 million, and then you have to add an extra $5 million or so for to come to about $80 million, and that was simply outside of our price ability. And instead, by making changes to mechanical and electrical components, and by planning to build this over one phase. They've been able to reduce the cost by $14 million. And so there we have the $61 million. And then when you add in the land costs and a few other items, that comes up to the $66 million. That does mean that that there's more money that has to go into it. And I'm very pleased that the Southeast Event Center group have stepped forward. They'd initially committed $15 million. They're increasing their contribution to $25.5 million. That's an extra $10 million. We are applying for further grant support from the federal and provincial government. We are hoping to get that additional support. There are no guarantees, however, so we have to award the tender in order for this project to go ahead. And so the city is taking a lot of money out of reserves and some money out of the operating fund that will have an impact on our future finances. As the city manager mentioned, this means that particularly if we don't get the other levels of government additional support, that there's a good chance we would have to borrow additional money, and that's why a future motion would include authorizing moving ahead with that borrowing if necessary. I think this is an important project. It's a project that we should absolutely not walk away from. We've put a lot of work into this. We have massive support from the private sector, incredible support from other levels of government. The deal that we're getting is that, yes, we are contributing more than we planned to initially, but we're still only contributing approximately 35% of the total cost of this project. So we're contributing just over 1/3, and we're getting an incredible event center. We're getting a brand new arena with over 2,000 seats. We're getting a multi-purpose space, and this is all going to be in one location in the downtown area connected to our existing facilities. And so this is a challenge. It's going to cause hardship for the user groups who will have to obviously not have the Centennial Arena available for a year. But I believe that on the whole, this is an important project and one that we should proceed with, even though the cost did come in higher than initially projected.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I vote in favor of this approval of this project. This is a generational decision for this council. And what I mean by generational is that these opportunities don't come with every term of council. The decision changes what Steinbach will look like and replacing an aging facility. That if we say no to this project, then we start all over. What do we replace our arena with? Because it has aged out. When I speak of generational decision, I think of the history of Steinbach councils and the decisions that have made a huge impact on our community. Various councils have made some tough decisions, and these decisions don't come easily. They come with a lot of angst and thought processes as we worry ourselves, but we also worry our staff to the nth degree. And this decision is 15+ years in the making. Past councils also deliberated many years on their large projects. As the supply and installation of water sewer lines in the 1950s took 7 or 8 years for that council to come up with those dollars. And, but it turned into a long-term viability for the residential, commercial, industrial future of Steinbach. It was a huge decision. A major project that was 10 years in the making was the rebuilding of Main Street in the 80s. When I first started with council in the early 80s, then I started working for the town of Steinbach in the early 80s, not council. Council deliberated, and it was part of 2 elections of council to plan the many years, because it was interrupt everything that would involve Main Street, from businesses, and a lot of the businesses were against the rebuilding of Main Street, so it took council to make that decision, and that rebuild over a 2-year period in the late 80s. They really struggled with that decision. I heard all those things, but in the end, the decision was, it did it with great teamwork. And this decision too is with great teamwork with not only provincial and federal government, but also specifically with the fundraising portion of our team. The building of the indoor pool in 2001, that discussion was 30 years in the making. And those discussions started before 1972 when the SRSS was being built. The initial plan was to build an indoor pool attached to that school because the Kinsman Pool had just been shut down on Elmdale. And it continues to be one of the busiest pools in Manitoba. But it too changed Steinbach as to who we were. We started to develop as a reason to live in Steinbach kind of issues. The life cycle of a city, of Steinbach, is not easy to predict. But we see life cycle changes, and as the councils have been making decisions the last 16 years that Michael and myself have been involved, we have seen that we've done major projects in infrastructure, and then along comes a recreation project, and then the change focuses over all the years. It cycles through, and it's time. It's time to build this community event center. We have an opportunity to replace an aging structure that was built in 1967, and it's come to its end of its life structure. But if we say no to this project, we won't have this opportunity again. I feel that all the players have put everything in. We've talked about this event center all the 16 years that I've been on council. In October 2019, which is almost a lifetime ago, prior to COVID, and before COVID changed our world, the anticipated cost was just over $42 million. The cost to our taxpayers was about $10 million, about 25% of construction. Today, it's at 35% of cost, but it's going to be just over, it's going to cost our taxpayers $21 million. $7 million of that already is in a recreation reserve fund. And also the positive thing, it's going to be whatever we borrow is going to be paid out over 5 years. So from the time of borrowing, we will be able to pay off this facility. This is a time to build this event center, not only as a hockey facility, that's one of the main focuses, but it's a community event center, and that needs to be continue to be the focus, as we have a walking track, we have bank facilities, volleyball, basketball space, and it'll be a centerpiece to our downtown. But I also want to recognize the efforts of our staff, and Troy Workton, Paul Reimer, and Russ Dick, and all the accomplishments and all the thought process that they've put in it as well. But it is time to move forward with this project.
Anything further? Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got to add to this, you've said a lot, both you, Councillor Swagstra and Councillor Siemens, but a number of years back I was volunteering for the Steinbach Pistons, and just looking at the arena, the age of the arena, the condition of the arena, I had a passion to run for council for this reason. And I know councils in the past have worked on this diligently, and our staff has worked diligently over the last couple of years, and I'm really excited to see this actually come to fruition. So I'm excited.
Anything further, Council? Councillor Hebert.
Lots of times when we think of a project of this magnitude and the time it took, I mean, this is over 20 years or 30 years that it's been discussed. The sentiment sometimes is one, we are so far into it that there's no turning around. This is definitely not the case here in the construction of this event center. This is a most worthwhile project for the citizens of our city and also those in the neighboring municipalities. The people have worked extremely hard at bringing this to fruition and getting the start of it building. People are willing to give of themselves, working endless hours and days to bring us to our final tender number. To bring this project to fruition, there are a lot of people and companies involved, and there are a lot of people and companies to thank. I'd like to thank the provincial and federal government, the Southeast Event Center Group, Jeff Penner and the people at Vern Penner Architects, Graham Construction and Engineering, a very worthwhile and reputable Canadian company, previous mayors and councillors, Paul Penner and the other city employees, our CEO, Troy Workentine, the council of the past 4 years, and all of us, of course, are back right now. Again, I'd like to thank all those involved and the citizens of our community that have cheered us on. We have a supportive and energetic city, and this council is happy to serve you and get projects like this a chance. I believe that the citizens of Steinbach will be celebrating when this event center is completed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to be here. It's good to finally be at this point where the tender is being awarded, and again, I echo all the thanks that all council has done. But as a bit of a unintentional continuity of your opening, Mr. Mayor, we are here as councillors today being able to do this project because of the wisdom of past councils. And when I reflect on that, I'm incredibly humbled by all the hard work that was done by administration, by the individuals that were working to be able to say that we're not the council that's going to be blowing that. We're doing this incredibly responsibly. With the administration and the individuals that were working on it through the events group, we're able to get a guaranteed maximum price. And that is very, very important to highlight, that we have a guaranteed maximum price that the building will not exceed, that the building itself will not exceed on that. And we're still doing it on 5-year lending. That is absolutely unheard of for a facility of this size to go up on 5-year terms. And so we are not the council that is now going to be blowing up the future of our city to build this facility because the time is now or because we have funds secured. We are still looking out for the future of the city by building this facility with strong fiscal responsibility. Yes, there is the potential that we may have to, that we are moving into our reserve funds a little bit more than we would intended to. However, I don't think any of us were oblivious to know that we were going to be needing to find more funding, that this wasn't all of a sudden going to be a magical hand and we weren't going to win the Lotto Max to be able to fund this. So the fact of the responsibility that has happened over past councils and the responsibility that we as this council are taking to move this project forward, I can't be prouder of everybody that's been part of this decision making.
Thank you, Councillor. Susan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an exciting day that has been a long time coming, and I'm pleased to support the tender and look forward to seeing the shovel in the ground and the new event center downtown. While I realize, like all of you do, that the cost is going to be much higher than originally anticipated, there's not much we can do about the COVID factor. Every effort has been made to reduce the cost of the project without reducing the scope, but the reality is the city is still only paying approximately 1/3 of the cost of this facility. We can still pay it off in 5 years, and as it currently stands, it will not have a further impact on mill rate. As Councillor Siemens mentioned before, I also think it is important to consider what would happen if we did not approve this project here tonight. Steinbach would still need a new arena. We would likely lose the investment from the private sector, and there's no guarantee we would be able to keep the investment from other levels of government. We would have to start from square one in terms of the design and scope of the project, delaying it even further, and the cost to the city would likely exceed the $23 million we are committing for this project. So even though the project is costing more than anticipated, it is still a good deal for the city.
Anything further? Anything in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to observe that, in past councils, there have been various iterations of this type of project, and there's been splits, and sometimes a portion of it looked like it was going to move ahead and it didn't. To have a unanimous council behind this project, I think says a lot, and it says that there's been a lot of planning, a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and frankly, we should be appreciative of councils that frankly even go back before our time. That to get to this point, you have to look at options and explore, and it takes a while, and you sort of go farther, you go forward, and then you go backward. This project has the support of council, it has the support of our events group, it has support within the community. I believe it is the right project to go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Swagser. Thank you, Council. Council, this, as Council Penner said, this is a great place to be. This is a great place to be at, where we are right now, approving this project. This project started in the 80s, in the late 80s, and every so often I sit with former Mayor Pankratz, and he tells me a story of the time they bought the first lot, the first house on Elmdale Street. And he tells me what he paid for, what council paid for it, and I go through my mind what we paid for the lots we bought. I'm somewhat embarrassed when you look at the different, but it was a different time, and appreciated values went up, but I think we were prudent, we worked hard, we kept focusing, council after council after council kept buying up property in this area for a time like this. They didn't know what it was going to be, but they did it for this. And I remember back, I think it was 2018 when we started meeting with this, what became the SEG group, right? We were meeting at High Life, and it became the SEG group. Michael and we and I picked you, Councillor Hebert, for your passion for this project. You mentioned your passion, and I picked you because you had that passion. Michael kept us all on track, and you and me were able to sit there and dream and negotiate. And, but that's what it was. This was a team. And we'd bring it back and we'd discuss and we'd whittle away this and we'd work on it. And it was a back and forth, but in about a year, we did have a deal. And we had a project and a plan. And then, of course, COVID hit, but we didn't lose our project. We didn't lose our focus because we knew what we had to do for the community. We knew this was something we needed. And we kept going forward and we kept running for that prize. And today, it's not built, but we're at another milestone where we've been able, now we can award the project. This is just, it's huge for our community. It's historic for our community. This is a project that will go down in the books. It's our largest project we've ever done, and we're only in it for 1/3. Like, that's just unheard of across our country. In communities our size, building rec centers like this, there's not that kind of interest. I'm thankful too for the province, the federal government, for our SEC group. Thank you for our administration. They've been amazing. The amount of times I walked through the office and Troy was buried. I don't know if I think we've seen the binder. The binder's about 6 inches tall for what he's working on, and he's got a couple more like that. And that he works through almost daily as he's going through this. But who I'm very thankful for, the most thankful for, and the most proud of is each one of you. For seeing the dream, working on it, and even as it took so long, never losing sight of what we were doing. And it started with Councillor Bill's passion. Thank you. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
I think we did the other motions on this. Check Troy.
Roy, there were multiple motions on this?
I do also recommend council approve a further motion related to the funding of the project. And what that motion would do, and I'll paraphrase it, that council resolve to approve additional funding for the proposed event center project totaling $13.185 million, of which $11.4 million to be raised from the city's reserve, or to be provided by the city's reserve funds, and $1.785 million to be provided by from the city's general operating fund. And further, that administration proceed to prepare a further local improvement plan for the creation of up to $5 million of additional debt for the event center project on a contingency basis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wargadine. Council, we're looking for a motion to approve that. Councillor Swagstra, second by Councillor Penner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a lot of this has been covered earlier. Obviously, in order to make up the city's portion, there's additional funds that are required, and so 11.4 million from reserve funds, up to 1.785 million from the operating fund, and then also giving administration the option to draft a borrowing bylaw if that is necessary. We're obviously going deeper into the reserve funds than we would like, and certainly deeper than administration would like. We can only do this because of a long history of past councils being fiscally responsible. The fact that we are able to do this at all, yes, we're digging deep, but we can because of a lot of sacrifices made in the past and a lot of careful decisions, 5-year borrowing, making sure that we still have funds available. So that's how we were able to do this.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further, Council? Anything closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We will go to 9, administrations, accounts payable, back of the book. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments? Call for for the question, all those in favor? That is carried. Number 9B, this is bylaw 2166. This is road closing for Industrial Road West and Industrial Road West Street renaming to Campbell Road. This is first reading. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, bylaw 2166, as you noted, is a proposed road closing, or at least a portion of road closing for a road that already exists, and also road renaming for Industrial Road West to be changed to Campbell Road. The purpose of the bylaw is so that this revised road configuration coincides with anticipated subdivision and future sale of lots in this particular area, which is at the intersection of what would become Campbell Road and Acres Drive for further industrial development. And just as a point of Steinbach's history, the roadway name change, as noted in the package, would result in the road carrying the name of a former settler of this particular area. Recommendation is to give this bylaw first reading to allow for public hearing to be scheduled.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Council, how would you like to proceed?
Motion to approve first reading.
Second by Councillor Pinner.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Call for the question, all those.
I did.
Call for the question, all those in favor? Carried. We're getting tired.
I don't want Jake Siemens to get a hold of that Campbell settler thing. They could be here for a while.
Tell ya, I think we should go back to summertime clothing, because this is hot in here today.
Really hot.
Okay, any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to number 11, this correspondence petitions, Seine Rat River Roseau Watershed District. This is the minutes of September 21 and September 20, 2022. Take it as information.
What about the letter we had, Mr. Mayor, from, do we need to put that in?
I never saw that letter.
Okay, and mine?
Other business, we have a motion to endorse Councillor Jake Siemens to run for office at AMM on the executive board.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Councillor Hebert, any comments?
I think Jake's a good fit for his relational ability, but also now that he's retired, he's got more time to, attend the meetings and do some extra advocating for the city, but not only for the city, for the region, because I do know we want to take a more regional approach with certain projects. So I think it would be good for City Steinbach, but also for municipalities surrounding us if Jake was the one who got the position.
I will just add to that, I believe Jake is the right guy for that, and I support him 100%.
You will all work hard.
Anything further? Council, yes, I do support this too, and I do believe it's time for us to look regionally. As we are and becoming more of the hub for the southeast, I think it's wise that the representation to AMM come from us. And we've got a seasoned councillor here. We've got 4 terms under his belt. He's seasoned. He knows. He's known well by many of the councillors that are in the AMM, and I see it as a win-win for our entire region as we look regional to work with our municipalities that are. Call for the question. All's in favor? That's carried. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that. I get a seconder? Oh.
Councillor Siemens, Councillor Bill Hebert. Call for the question. All's in favor? That is carried.
I think I'm going to haul most of this home.
Make it